What is up, people? We are here with my good friend Matthew Pasquale, my Irish friend, obviously.
Irish-Italian.
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 Is it really Irish-Italian?
Yeah.
I was just making a stupid joke.
No, I'm actually Irish-Italian.
Really?
Yeah, my mom's Irish.
Your mom's Irish.
Yeah.
That's Italian.
I'm very Canadian, though. My mom's grandparents, I think, were born here. My grandparents were born here. My dad's mom was born in Canada.
Okay.
So I'm like, no one speaks Italian in my family.
Yeah, you're as Italian as I am.
He's a munchkin.
Yeah,
And
munchkin.
then we have Mark. Sorry for people, but everyone knows Mark by now if you've been listening to this podcast, I suppose. Right, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I realized that I wasn't Italian when I went to Italy as an older person, like I guess as I am right now.
Yeah.
And as soon as you step off the plane, you realize how not Italian you are. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't know. I haven't been to Italy.
Both my parents are Italian. So you're like, oh, I'm Italian. I'm World
But, like,
Cup comes
born
around.
here?
You're like, World Cup. No, they're born in Italy.
Okay.
So you might think that I have some kind of like, I'm more Italian than the next guy.
Yeah.
And then you go there, and then you realize that you have not been influenced by anything Italian for your entire life.
Yeah.
Which means, if you say you're Italian, it means you're saying there is nothing to be Italian per se. Does that make sense?
Correct, yeah.
Because when you're there, it's something different.
Yeah, it's like Italian-American is like different than
It's its
Italian.
own
you know
thing,
what I'm saying?
right? You are who you hang out with, I suppose. But anyway, Matthew, for the people who don't know, is a very experienced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player. So we're going to talk a lot about BJJ, which of course is one of our favorite topics.
Yes.
You guys know that Mark is also training. What are you now? You're almost
Almost.
right there.
I'm almost mediocre. Yeah.
You're almost mediocre.
He's almost a black belt.
almost a
almost-
black belt.
Probably another year.
We shall see.
See, we had Joel on the
Yeah.
other day, and he said 14 more years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't say that it's another year.
Don't worry. In 3 more years, I think I could give you a black belt.
Yeah. Once you get your.
Once I get 2 stripes.
Two
Yeah.
stripes?
Yeah.
Good.
How does that? You need 2 stripes to give a black belt.
I'm pretty sure it's 2. You get 1 after the first, after 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been a black belt for 3 years.
Is it getting taekwondo-y? Okay, before I say that, I don't want people to get pissed off because I've studied taekwondo for a long
Yeah.
time, like back in the
We
day.
say
when I-
McDojo-y. McDojo-y.
Okay, so let's just say that. Like, in my opinion, like you see the martial arts, they come, and then as they come here, they start to kind of fade into McDojo-y. And it seemed like BJJ was the last one
Yeah,
to
you
hold
are
on.
right.
Okay.
You
go
know
ahead.
what? If you asked me that question 2 years ago, I'd say no. But
Sure.
I actually would kind of agree with you. And it's just because, look, you, like when I started, there was 2 academies. There was Rev, which was like the outside of the Toronto Academy, and then there was Toronto BJJ, and like that was it. So I just went there. I wanted to do Muay Thai. When I showed up, they're like, "Oh, it's Jiu-Jitsu today." So I'm like, okay. And then it just kind of happened. I was 18, and
How old are you now?
I'm 31.
31, okay.
Yeah. So I haven't taken any time off since 18 to this age. So I've been very consistent, like aside from injuries and stuff. The thing is, though, like when we started, there was not that many people. And those people become black belts. Some are good, some are bad. And those people are like, what am I going to do now? Open an academy. So they start opening academies outside of the city, and it kind of grows and grows. And then depending on what they want to do with their business, it comes a little bit watered down, right? But when somebody starts jiu-jitsu, they really want to get that blue belt. Like, I want to get a belt
blue belt's
because it
great.
separates you from everybody, right? And you're starting to see that, like, there's more of like a direct path to the blue belt opposed to like you'll get it when it's time.
And there's the addition of colors to placate people.
Yeah.
A lot of times to
Yeah.
make them feel better about the grading
Yeah.
process. We were talking about before, because there's a difference between I'm going to do this in the best possible way to make me the best at jiu-jitsu or
Correct.
anything else you're doing, and then there's I'm going to do this in a way that allows me to do things I enjoy doing more often than not. Because as we were saying, the hindrance to a lot of training of any skill is when someone decides to pick things they enjoy doing, as opposed to doing things you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
That's actually a funny example of that, and I've referenced it to other friends that I train with. So if we're covering a myriad of techniques in a class, which is understandable, keep the class moving. And a lot of times it's concept stuff.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm partnering with men and we're drilling, I'm like, hey, you want to do this next one? Nope. What do you want to do? I just want to do the entry on this first one.
So there's a reason for that.
I said, don't you want to do don't you want? Nope. I just got to get this right.
Yeah.
And he'll take the worst, shittiest thing that he's not good at, and then drill the shit out of it.
So
Weaknesses before strengths.
Yeah.
Is weaknesses before strength is not a new. We talk a lot about it at my seminars. It's not a new concept, but it's a concept that as many people want to parrot the concept, but then you watch what they're doing,
Yeah.
and they're not doing what they say.
A lot of people just want to do the thing that they like doing the most. And in jiu-jitsu, that, like you've said, it's rolling. That's the most fun.
Sure.
But you cannot get better at a sport if you just are like just doing the sport and not gaining any skills in that sport. You know what I'm saying?
Well, number one. Number two, jiu-jitsu deserves more respect than calling it a recreational sport.
Yeah, correct.
If you want to go play, what do you play that hand frisbee?
Like frisbee golf?
Fucking sport. What is it? Yeah.
Oh, ultimate frisbee?
Yeah, if you want to play
yeah.
fucking frisbee golf, yeah, okay. You don't need sport-specific,
Right.
mentality. But jiu-jitsu is like, even if you're at the lowest level of jiu-jitsu, the consequences are
Screwing up.
way higher.
Yeah.
They're way lower than Olympic lifting, and we might talk about that later,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. But it is consequential to not. You can't just take jiu-jitsu and I'm just gonna have a light fun with it. Like it deserves some respect.
But imagine if you were like starting Olympic weightlifting and you're like, oh, I just want to max my snatch out every day. Would you ever get better?
No.
Exactly. Right?
Man, you just take the words, because the snatch, when you're doing like a max effort snatch, what you're doing is you're displaying what training has gotten you.
Yes.
But you don't use that to train.
Right.
And if you actually follow people who are, get this, actual Olympic weightlifters, because they do exist in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not training using Olympic weightlifting.
Right.
Which is
We have the best kid in the city. I can never pronounce her name, but his name's Nicky. His dad is the Bulgarian guy who his world records still stand because they changed the weight classes. And I think I'm pretty sure he has an Olympic gold medal and world champion stuff. And the way this kid trains is like perfect. Everything he does is perfect. Every rep is perfect. And he rarely misses a rep unless it's like the day to push it. But that's like one day, every couple months.
Testing day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only time you should fail.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing, is that you see it all the time. Is like people train to failure.
Yeah.
But you're not supposed to be training for failure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just like I would say, arguably, and we said this on the weekend, people train too hard, but they don't train in hard. Does that make sense?
It's the CrossFit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
It's a model, and I don't want to shit on CrossFit, because I was just about to say, actually, because we deal with a lot of professional CrossFitters, and one thing that we notice is really good CrossFitters, what they are not doing for training is CrossFit, right? Like,
I know the same thing. Or they
because-
come from they're like an elite weightlifter, and then they come to
Sure.
CrossFit, or an elite gymnast. Yeah.
Yeah, to be an elite CrossFitter is not to continuously do CrossFit repeatedly.
Correct.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Just like linear programming is not going to work. It's the same mentality. You can't just continue. Like, you can't start on a Murph and hope that as you do Murph longer, Murph gets better. Because it's literally not how human physiology works. You can't just lift something heavier for an infinite amount of time and expect the adaptations to carry on.
Yeah. So I find the guys, like, don't get me wrong, I love to roll as well in jiu-jitsu, and like where I'm at now in my, we'll just say like jiu-jitsu journey, rolling is definitely the thing I do the most. But there was years of drilling that like accommodated, like kind of went with that too. But you'll get a lot of guys who just roll and they're very low skill, but they're very tough. They just get like a lot tougher and they just get in good shape, but they have no skills, or like very mediocre skills.
That's interesting, because from jiu-jitsu is not my primary martial art, so I wouldn't say that it's my expertise. So, but when you're training in jiu-jitsu, it does seem that there are qualities that allow you to be good up to, let's say, purple. Yeah. And then there's this thing where if you're one of those people who relied on the fact that you're strong as hell, you hit purple, and then people who you were beating start to beat you. Yeah. And people don't realize what's happening is that strong as hell, you've spent all those dollars already.
So purple belt, I always say, is my favorite belt. It's the only belt you can be good and shitty at, and it's okay.
You're good and shitty simultaneously.
You can be shitty at blue belt and like you be good, but at purple belt you could be both. At brown belt, it's time to get good.
I've never, when I got my brown belt in Kempo, I don't know how many years ago, I've never been as good as I was as a brown belt.
I would say,
well, I shouldn't say that. I had never been as focused in training as much. I shouldn't say that either. But there is something inherent to being a brown belt that is different than being any other belt.
Yeah, because you're close to black, right?
It's like the last time you thought you knew something.
Yeah.
right? And then you get your black.
Well, no. Right?
And then you realize you don't know shit.
Anything.
And then you roll with high-level blacks and go,
Yeah.
I don't know shit.
But that's everything.
Yeah.
Like,
It's levels.
if I go to academy and say, look, I'm a big guy too. I'm 6'3", 220. So like that also helps. But say if I'm the most skilled person on the mats, people will look at me and be like, oh, like that's where it ends. I'm like, no.
Oh yeah,
There's guys that what I do to you will easily do that to me. And then there's guys that will do that. And it doesn't end because like there's a lot of people doing jiu-jitsu and there's a lot of really good jiu-jitsu guys out there.
Okay, that brings me to another interesting concept in that in jiu-jitsu, like, because it's a competition-heavy martial art as it is right now.
That's it now. When I started, it was
totally.
not as much.
When I started traditional martial arts, like, since I can remember.
When did you start jiu-jitsu? What year?
Jiu-jitsu, no. Like, when I started striking, I don't remember what date it was because it was like when consciousness came in, I was already doing it.
You were like 5 or something.
Yeah, I was just doing it the whole time. Where was I going with this? I was going with this, but in a I was going to say back then I couldn't give a shit about comps, right? I didn't even care. It was just the combat aspect. But now that you're in a competition heavy thing like jiu-jitsu, that also skews the training, and it also skews the definition of what good is because, okay, so if you're how old are you now, Mark? You have to say it.
Every bit of 50 years old.
Okay, so you have a 50-year-old who's going to get a black belt.
Yeah.
But then you have a kid who couldn't get his blue belt for several years because you have to be 16.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's too young.
There's a difference here, right? Because you have a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old who gets a blue belt after training from their 15, but then you have a guy who's a blue belt who's been training for 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a difference between there's black belts and there's black belts and then there's black belts.
Yeah.
And it's like competition.
Like the
belts.
AOJ kids that are, blue belts and have been training longer than me, those kids are going to be serious black belts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
because they just basically like as soon as they get their blue belt, they just do 1 year at each belt until black. I think it'll be 19 to get your black belt. I might be incorrect about that, but yeah, they just go 16, 17, 18, 19.
Yeah, so that what I was getting at is that it's like, so what constitutes? Okay, so let's say that you're an amazing wrestler.
Yeah.
Let's say that you're like one of those badass wrestlers. By competition standard, you're kind of a purple belt. Like, like just stop and if I give you like a arm triangle and a guillotine, I mean, you're a
tough guy to deal with.
You shouldn't get a purple belt in the scheme of what jiu-jitsu is as a skill.
That's like Daniel Cormier, right? When he started, he was an Olympian.
Yes.
And he had to like go through the system too.
True.
They just go through it faster. Like they're already coming to the table with skills.
Sure.
Right? It's not jiu-jitsu skills, but it's it transfers, right? It's like a judo black belt. If you're a judo black belt, you start at blue belt. Because they know how to throw people, and there is some on the ground as well.
But do you think that skews the desire to drill versus roll? Like if it's always competition heavy, maybe that's why people don't want to drill. Because I'd want to do the opposite. At this time in my life, if you take a class and it's like 50-50 drills to rolling, and I'm being nice sometimes, because usually it's like, here's an arm bar, try once. Okay, here we go, roll.
Yeah.
But as I get older, I'm like, I want to skew the other way, where I want to be like 99 drilling.
It depends.
You know what I mean? Like,
it depends. So I'll kind of go through, like, I've had a bunch of different instructors, and the one that I've had the most is George. And he gave me, I was a blue belt when he started. And he's the one who like made our academy how it is and like the system and stuff.
Which academy is it?
Toronto BJJ.
Okay, so you're at Toronto BJJ and Rev
And I started
MMA.
at Toronto BJJ.
And Rev MMA.
So I go to, me and Joel became friends, and then he invited me to go to Rev, and I just go like once a week and meet all the guys. So
two good clubs.
Fuck us all up.
No, like it's a different vibe. Those guys are a little bit more like friendly and like it's more welcoming. There's a little bit more like less emphasis on trying to kill each other. So I try to view that day as like I'm gonna get a lot of rounds in and like put myself in weird positions and like just mix it up a bit. So when I started jiu-jitsu, it was more we'll teach you 5 techniques, you do them all twice and then roll. So like I wasn't good. I would go to competitions and get smashed. Like going to a competition, I had no confidence because I'm like, hopefully I'm better than the guy. And then when George came in, a guy named Tommy started. And Tommy was shitty when he started. He was terrible. And then like 3 months later, all of a sudden he was just good. And then 6 months later, he was good. And then after a year, I'm like, this guy's better than me. And I've been doing it for like 3 years. And then he goes to Worlds and he wins. He's the first Canadian to win Worlds.
Shit.
And at the time, I was doing jiu-jitsu, but I was kind of doing a bit more boxing and jiu-jitsu was on the side. And when he won Worlds, everyone was like, wow, like this is possible. Like, you know, Canadians doing jiu-jitsu, we don't see ourselves as good as the Brazilians or the really good Americans. So going to Worlds is like, hopefully I just get to the quarters. And this guy wins and like fucks everybody up. So I'm like, something's happening here. So then I start coming back and start training. And I go to Worlds my first year, 2011, purple belt. And I get bronze in my weight class and bronze in the absolute. I lost against Felipe Pena, who's like probably the best black belt.
If you're not listening to this, that's not a loss. That's just like, I rolled Felipe Pena, and what happened was what always fucking happens.
So I'll tell you a story. I'm in the absolute division, and I did super heavy. So there's only one weight class above me. So I'm like one of the bigger guys. And first round I faced the guy who came in second at ultra heavy. Close guard, arm bar him in 15 seconds. And I'm like, I'm going to win. I'm fucking unreal. Yeah. Then I'm pacing back and forth. And they see this little Brazilian kid in an Adidas gi and Romulo Bahal just sitting there. I didn't know who Romulo was because like I just wasn't like in the mix, right? And I'm pacing like, I'm going to fuck this kid up. And it was Felipe. I'm like, I'm going to fuck this. So anyways, he put a beating on me.
He was thinking the same thing. And he was thinking the truth.
He tapped everybody that year.
You know what he was thinking? He was thinking, the guy across who thinks he's going to fuck me up is about to get fucked up. Yeah. That's what he was thinking.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? The year that Tommy won blue belt, he beat Felipe. He delayed his progress. He was supposed to go blue belt, purple, brown. He had to do 2 years at blue because he lost in the quarters. And then he went purple, brown, and everyone knows if you follow jiu-jitsu, he's like in the top 3 gi players at any time.
Did you finish the story? What was it about him?
Okay, so it was like not only the amount of training they were doing, they were drilling a lot. They were like literally just repping and repping and repping. And when you would roll with these guys, it was like each day they just like just had new skills. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like I rolled with you yesterday and you weren't as good as you are today. They all lived in the house. It was Mikey. Mikey went as well too. I got to mention Mikey because he came in third, right?
What's his last name?
Zineski.
Oh, wait. Try again.
Zineski.
Okay.
It's Polish.
Okay.
He's probably the best jiu-jitsu mind that I've ever known. He's like the way I am is because of him and Tommy and George as well. But I usually go more to their classes. So they had mats in their house. So they all live in this house and they would just drill all day in these mats. And it was like each day I saw this kid get better. And I'm like, something's happening here. And then when he went to Worlds, it was like close guard. Everyone would stand in his close guard, punch sweep to mount or arm bar. Everybody. And it was the same shit they were drilling.
Okay, so now I've never had the pleasure of getting choked unconscious by you.
Yeah, one day.
He has.
Several times.
Yeah, and he tells me that something that he says about your game, and by the way, if you're listening to this, the podcast called Control Yourself, we're going to get to this idea. We're skirting around the issue of...
Yeah, now we're kind of like fanboying out of it. Yeah. I haven't seen you in some time, you're looking good.
Yeah, you know? Thank you very much. How do you control yourself in this regard? But he was saying, you were saying that one thing about him is there's a focus on a small number of...
make a handful of techniques perfect.
Yeah.
So rather than being a generalist, you think that you should be picking out...
You need a very sharp A game.
So if everything goes right, this is my game kind of game.
Yeah. If you look at the top guys right now, their A games are like razor sharp. Like look at a Marigali, look at a Pena, look at like their passes that they do are perfect. Their guards that they do are perfect. And then they have like general jiu-jitsu that saves them. Like everyone knows how to escape mount. But if Marigali mounts you, you're not escaping. I'm sorry. Like, you know.
But are they position specific or
it's more like how you want to approach it. So it's like if you're a guard player, it's like how I get to my guard that I want to get to.
The path.
Yeah, the path. And Tommy, when he went to Worlds, it was like, I'm going to close guard on everybody. Because if I could close guard on you, you will not beat me.
Because his path is from there.
Yeah.
So you just got to get to the start point of your path.
Yeah. And like he has so much game and so much like ability in close guard that if I could get you there, I'll just win by default. And like when I started competing, that was my thing too. As long as I could close guard on you, I've now put myself in the best opportunity to win because that's where my best arm bars are, my best sweeps are, my best this.
Okay, so again, from the, kind of an outside looking in, there's some instructors where I think like the path is emphasized. Like for example, in New York there at Henzo's, what's his name, Danaher.
Yeah.
Like it seems to me like there's people playing the leg lock game, and then there's Danaher who's running a path. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's like originally, and I think he had said this on a podcast I listened to, originally it was like, yeah, I do leg locks. So in other words, if they're available and I have nothing else to go for, I can hit a leg lock.
Yeah.
But he literally has a path so that you're problem solving on your way to your leg lock. Same with Eddie. With
they made it more
Planet.
systematic.
It's a path. It's like you get to here, run your path. So it's the storytelling of this path, and you're saying to focus on.
If you want to be like an effective jiu-jitsu player, that doesn't mean I actually think that there's lots of people out there that like know way more about jiu-jitsu than me, like positions and the techniques of the week and stuff.
Yeah, if they had to list them all out, they would.
But if like when it comes to the part that is actually effective, like let's do the rolling part and like see who is better. 9 times out of 10, I'm usually better at that part, right? And it's like, okay, so this guy could show me like the best worm guard and the best reverse Dilla, whatever, but he can't put it in practice because he either hasn't drilled it hard enough that it's not like he can't use it in a realistic situation, or he just it's not effective for him. It's not available there. Like my shit's available at any time. Like, look, when you roll with me, I'm gonna smash your guard and mount you, and like anything you do, it's still gonna happen.
Can you pretend that's like a little hard?
Yeah, pretend that you're having.
Like, Mark, you're so bad. But you know what I'm saying? It's like
Mark, you know when I pass you and I just win easily.
You know when I pass at will and I kind of laugh, where I let you make all your connections and I still get out.
But no, if you watch me roll, guys my size, smaller than me, whatever, you could just kind of like, if you were betting, you would say, okay, this is what's gonna happen.
Yep.
Unless I'm trying to do some other stuff, like there's things I also like to work on as well. But it's like he's gonna hit this sweep, he's gonna put himself. If he's like Matt's going like A game, he's smash passing the mount, or he's closing guard on you and making your life hell.
This is very interesting because now we're getting back to this concept of controlling yourself, because with my seminars, I find, and maybe you can speak to this with jiu-jitsu, I find that there's people who are chronic seminar goers, right?
Yep. I know a couple of people.
You know where I'm going with this? So
like they have like so many letters beside their name.
And it ossifies them in that there's so much information, but you haven't honed your filter. So now it's like a client's in front of you and the person's like, what do I do? It's like squat with your arms over your head, crawl on the floor, put your arm up, do this, there's like 7,000 things. And at the end of it, I go, okay, so what's the problem and what are you going to do? It's like, and then they just fall back into, I'm going to do what everyone else does, instead of actually programming for that guy.
The issue too is like whatever seminar you just did, that's like what you did for 3 months.
World. Like,
it's like, no, this is the one, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like you see that in jiu-jitsu too. It's like, oh, there's worm guard now. It's like, that's the key. And it's like, it can be the key if you like do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times with different body types. And like, man, I remember like when we were getting ready for competitions, me and my buddy would go in his garage because it was so cold, put hoodies on and our gis over and just drill X pass. Yeah. And what pass do I hit on everybody? We just warmed up with 100 of them.
Okay, so now we're getting into this concept where, same with Brian Marug, who's one of our instructors. He's a competitive black belt out in Oregon.
Yeah.
And like he does Toriandos, but he does them like, you go into the gym, and we were talking about this before, it's people associate getting strong and training with the lifting of weights. So it's like there's an association bias where what someone does in a gym setting, and what I mean by a gym setting is where you have machines and free weights, the traditional gym setting is what people use as if that's going to translate into what you're doing.
Correct.
Okay, so you can go out there and you can do, bicep curls, or you can do Olympic weightlifting because you think you're going to get powerful. And we were talking about this before, as if power is a universal quality that is bestowed upon you so that once I have power everywhere. But you don't, right? If you have power in Olympic lifting, you have power throwing something in the air and then sneaking underneath it and hoping not to die.
Yeah.
But that's not the power that you require. But if you're using a Toriando pass as a training drill, and again, the word training gets confused because there's training jiu-jitsu, and then I'm speaking about physical body preparedness.
Okay.
If you think about your drills as a way to make your body prepared, so it's training for jiu-jitsu, but it's physical training. Now, Toriando passes for time, as hard as you can, become way more effective than your snatching.
And the thing too is when you do it for time, or there's like a max effort approach.
Yes.
You're not thinking anymore, and it's just like this is what is as close to as realistic as possible. So to get back to like the training that made me, I felt like I had the biggest leaps in jiu-jitsu because I spent the most time at purple belt. I spent 4 years at purple belt.
Which is probably the best thing you could have done.
It was, because that's when George came, and I needed to spend more time there to like really get good. And we would do things where we do a lot of drills, and then we would do specific training. So it's like now we create the situation, and you have to try to put that technique into practice. So for example, say we're doing closed guard armbar, that's the drill. Then the specific training, you start in closed guard with the guy's arm crossed. It's like now arm bar him. So it's more realistic, and it's like as close to the rolling as possible.
So you start in the bad position.
Yeah.
That's what Dewey does as well.
Yeah.
Which makes me...
and it's like a minute 30 or like 30 seconds. And then we would always do like Toriano passes for time, or we do situational drills where it's like guy on the bottom is down by 2 points. He has to make something happen. And those are really like specific to competition. Or like you close guard on a guy, but you're down by an advantage. You have to make something happen. And you'll see yourself in competition. You'll be down a small amount, and there'll be maybe 30 seconds left, and like it's time to go. You got to sweep or you got to score.
It's amazing to me how the greats, like when you talk to someone when people really pay attention, you end up getting very similar conclusions.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've spoken to a lot of guys who are amazing at a variety of different things, jiu-jitsu and whatever, and it seems to me that the guys nobody ever tells me that the defining moment in their training career that made them better is when they learned how to add 15 pounds to their bench press.
Right, yeah.
Like nobody ever says, hold on, and people out there can jump on it and just hear me out here. Nobody ever says to me in a jiu-jitsu match, I lost. And I go, why'd you lose?
Yeah.
Nobody ever says, I lost because I think I needed 5 to 10 more pounds on my bench press. But fuck if I've heard all the time, I couldn't complete the squeeze.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't complete it because I didn't have it.
Or
and
detail was off.
the detail was off. And then I like, okay, well, show me your program. And then in the program, I go, well, where are you training max effort squeezes?
Yeah.
Like where I don't understand. It's like, well, I trained that in training. I was like, okay, how many rear naked chokes did you pull off last night in training? 2. So you did 2 sets of squeeze practice for a very small amount of time. Yes. So you don't train the squeeze, you play squeeze.
Yeah.
But you train the squat. And this is where I keep emphasizing, like everyone trains a squat as if that is the one capacity that you need to bring with you forever.
Right.
But in a jiu-jitsu player, it's like, shouldn't that be a physical adaptation program as well as, when you're in a rear naked choke, this is how you do it? Do you feel like we should be picking out smarter things to maintain and to train?
When it comes to conditioning, I changed my view on that around like a couple years when I was competing and stuff, where I always found jiu-jitsu guys would like just kill themselves in the gym, battle ropes, burpees, all this stuff. And I switched my program where it was a little bit more like just strength training in the gym and then kill myself on the mats, because like you gotta be like sport specific conditioning. My brother who plays professional hockey says no matter what I do in the gym, like when you're on the ice, it's just different.
Yeah,
it's different, right?
Yeah.
And just to put a pin in that for a sec, because I want to take a step back, because I think you were sort of going down a path too. It's when we talk to a lot of these high level performers, it's easy to misinterpret the message, because on the surface it's like, do the work, do the reps, that's how you get better. But what we're seeing is this whole concept of, do the work, but do the right work.
Yeah,
and do the smart
it's like smarter, not harder.
Because there's this thing in the ether right now, and I don't want to, point fingers or call out names, where there's the embrace the suck concept of training of like, it's all mental, just suffer through it, go harder, do it at extra rep, do that extra 2 miles, do this, suck it, don't be a bitch, fucking do it up. And what we always say is, show me somebody like that, and we'll show you a
fucked up person.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I love those people. I love the embrace the suck. It's all in your head. Push through it, because those people literally send my kids to school. Like for everyone saying that, I have an injury, keep going, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Those people end up severely broken.
Yeah.
And now listen. So again, internet land, people are, it's fucking, but they're going to jump at it. Listen. Some people make it through. Some people embrace the suck. They
Yeah.
push through their injuries and they're fine for it. But that's in spite of themselves. And I need people to understand that. Like the people at the highest level of performance, the best basketball player you know, the best hockey player that I've dealt with these people. Yeah, they're there because of their efforts, of course. But in a bigger picture, they're also there because they didn't break along the way.
It's a little bit of luck. Yeah.
Oh my God. So, because people are always like, well, that guy's not doing that type of training, so therefore I don't have to.
Yeah.
Because you think, not you think that, you know, the best basketball player in the world is the best because he does it best.
Right.
But that's not how life works, man. As soon as you say that, you completely eliminate genetics. He's there because he's the best. Like, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
now
I saw that with my brother. Just because my brother, he played in the NHL last year, so he reached the highest level after 9 years of like grinding in the AHL up and down and stuff. So him at AAA, there was a kid on his team that was drafted to the OHL, and it was like Stamkos, Pietrangelo, Del Zotto, this kid. So it's like NHL superstar, NHL superstar, NHL superstar, random kid.
Yeah.
And it was like, when he went to the OHL, he just couldn't hack it. Like, just couldn't keep up with everybody, and everyone kind of surpassed him. And the only kid on the AAA team that's still playing hockey is my brother. You know, and
I mean,
you know, like this kid was the best. He was the best on the team.
Longevity, man. Who's gonna manage the shit longest? And it gets back to this idea that you just push through it. Jiu-Jitsu guys are amazing for this. This is another topic. Jiu-Jitsu guys have a whole new category of injury diagnosing that nobody else in the world has. For example, you watch someone roll, someone gets up, they scream. They come up, they go, I'm okay. What happened? It just popped. Okay, let's stop. Everyone stop. When we write the word pop, that equals something, right? People don't, if you pop, watch, if I go like this, and I popped, but I didn't yell, ah! Okay, so that's an okay pop. But when you associate pop with an injury, you can't say something just popped, because that something is a tissue, and now that tissue's fucking damaged.
Yeah.
So, I just popped, I'll be fine. No, you tore something. That pop was either a ligament, or it was a tendon, or it was a muscle, and now you have a problem. And I don't know, for some reason, jiu-jitsu, or they'll get...
Because if it pops and it doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah, you'll be fine. And the other one is, it's just a muscle.
Yeah.
Again, I've been studying injuries.
I've said that before.
That's my yeah, right? There is no such thing as it's just the muscle, other than the fact that the pathological structure that exploded, there's an option. Sometimes it's a muscle, but the reasoning, there's more to it than it's just a muscle.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a muscle, thinking that a muscle injury is somehow less important to manage than if it's a joint it's wrong. Right? It's just wrong. Moral of the story: when something pops, it deserves your attention.
Yeah.
And I think there's this disconnect between mental toughness of, listen, if Matt is, younger Matt is at Worlds and he's in a tough match and he's in a shitty position, there's a mental toughness to get through and and pull it out.
That's like one isolated situation.
Right. But do I want to do this 6 days a week? Training every day?
If I'm his coach, if I'm with him as his doctor in a competition and something pops, look, motherfucker, nothing popped. You're fine. Let's go.
Get out there.
But as soon as you're done.
It's so weird though. Like, I've never hurt myself in a competition. I had one time my rib popped, and I don't know what happened. It sticks out. But it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. But I ended up losing the match. It was when the guy was putting so much pressure. He was stack passing me, and then it was just like, and I'm like, oh, and then he passed my guard off of that. But I think he would have beat me anyways. Yeah. That's the only time that like I hurt something kind of. But usually all the bad injuries I've had are always in training. Maybe because we spend way more time there. But like, if you look at the effort is max effort in a competition versus in training. But you always get hurt in training.
Yeah, you don't get hurt as much. Yeah,
most guys that I know always get hurt in training. Like,
the vast majority of my work with athletes is managing their load management when they're not on the ice or on the field, for sure.
You have a lot of guys that get injured in the weight room?
Almost all.
Yeah.
If you want my answer, the people get injured because they have they have mismatch problems. Like the goals they want they're not attainable in the way they train, the way they select things to train. They forget to ask if their body is prepared for it. So the mismatch of what you want to do versus what you can do is the answer for the vast majority of injuries that I manage.
Right.
Like, we were talking about this at the seminar the other day, and people never really give this enough thought, right? So we have an industry now, strength and conditioning, manual therapy. It was an industry now based on looking for imbalances and treating imbalances, and people are like, this is how you treat imbalance, you can't be imbalanced and blah, blah, blah. But we're creating the imbalances by assigning dumb exercises with people who don't have the bodies to do them. So,
right.
Example. If you have, let's say that I asked you in terms of how much of your hip do you own? Just in general. If you ask someone, you go, look at someone like an amazing person that has great movement, great, and then think of your hip. Move them around, both of them for a bit. What percentage of your hip do you really think you own? Like, think the best scenario you can have versus what you have.
This is a safe zone.
Like me personally,
Yeah,
This is a
general.
safe zone. We don't judge here.
me personally, I have
We're judging a lot.
I have like 5 degrees of internal rotation and way too much external rotation.
Okay, so which hip?
I'm a guard player, both hips.
Okay, so is one hip worse than the other?
No, like when I go to squat, when I approach 90, my knees just want to go like close guard.
Okay, they both suck.
Yeah, they both suck, but equally.
They both suck equally.
Yeah.
Which, for my example, it's probably they don't suck equally is the real answer.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is one's worse than the other. So
Right.
let's say if you hate both of them, let's just give your right one you think it's functioning at like 35%. These are just, if anybody online asks me to reference where I got these numbers, just fuck off, because I'm just giving an example, if that makes sense. Okay, so if your right one's 35,
Yeah.
and your left one, let's say it's 10.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, that's my hip.
Yeah. So whatever exercise you select, as soon as someone tells you to do it properly,
Yeah.
you know what that means?
What does that
You're
mean?
creating imbalances.
Yeah.
You have an imbalanced body, and now you're asking someone to do a balanced exercise like a squat. And now people are running around, there's an industry made on chasing the problem that we're causing. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, imbalances are because you're imbalanced, and then you do shit with your imbalances, and then it reinforces the imbalance.
And you need to get treatment.
And then you have to get treatment for the imbalance,
Yeah.
where everyone's looking for. When in reality, what you should have done is you should have said, I only have 35% of my right hip, and I only have 10% of my left hip.
Yeah.
Now, neither of these is good enough, but for damn sure, you should be bumping this one up very quickly, and then you should realize that you need to bump this one up as well.
Yeah.
And that's a different topic, right? Like, the
Right.
idea that you can learn jiu-jitsu with 35% and 10%. You'll learn jiu-jitsu, but understand that the learning curve is going to be far more difficult for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We were talking about this before we started recording, but again, I'm a strength and conditioning coach and I have a gym and stuff like that. And it's hard to get somebody to do the work that you're talking about.
Yes.
When they see squat, deadlift, press, pull,
I know.
literally like 1,000 times a day.
And
Right? You go on
yeah.
Instagram and all you see is like good looking people
Yeah.
exercising. You don't see like people doing FRC. I do because like,
know,
I follow
I know.
some of the stuff, but
It's not even
you know?
just FRC. There is a fundamental problem with the way who the fuck am I? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just giving my example. There's a fundamental problem in the way that we view exercises, and we've been telling people that we've been doing it correctly for so long that even industry people have forgotten that we're not doing it correctly. Does that make, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I would loop myself in there,
I don't
especially
know that
before we did a
anybody can
seminar
loop
too,
himself
right?
out, because
Yeah.
it's, just the difference between internal training and external training, which is really what our system is. We're saying that we do the internal training, everyone else is doing the external training. Just adding that idea that you have to control yourself first.
Right.
If you just give jiu-jitsu players that, just go, when you're in the weight room, even if we break it down, this is not 100% accurate, but if you're in a weight room and you're thinking this is the kind of control you have, your goals should be control your internal environment first, and then use that to learn how to control the external environment. So there should be a high percentage of internal training.
Yeah.
Meaning that if you have a problem, like your hip doesn't work, instead of layering weight on this shitty hip, You just have to change even if you don't know my system, if you change your focus to say, it's more important for me to have a hip than it is to have a strong hip. Just start there.
Yeah.
And then your programming changes. It's not going to be perfect, but if you just say to yourself, well, maybe I should be doing a little more body weight training, at least at the beginning, even that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, stop grabbing fucking things and throwing them around in your external environment when your meat wagon doesn't know where the hell it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That line you're saying too is basically jiu-jitsu in a nutshell. You have to control yourself to be able to control another person, right?
Right.
And it's not just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I mean, one of our instructors, John Quint, brilliant, was telling me an example at a seminar where he works with a lot of NFL athletes in the off season, and he told one of his guys, this was the exact example. You don't have a hip. And he told him everything he had to do his hip, and he did not follow the programming. And then 2 weeks into training camp, hey, can you come down? What happened? I screwed up my hip. And John's reaction was, what the fuck did you think was going to happen?
But this is a kid who came from like squat, power, clean, bench.
Just thought they could
Like since he was 8 years old.
power through.
Again,
Right?
And like, what are you going to tell him? He's like 35 now or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, same. Look at my brother. My brother grew up in the hockey system here at the highest level. Got drafted to the NHL, played in the AHL the year after. The only thing he didn't play in was the World Juniors. He was a goalie, and they always choose Quebec goalies. And he's like, they don't even speak English to me when I go. He's had 2 hip surgeries. He tore his labrum, had a hip surgery here. It was botched, had to do it in the States. And he has a torn labrum in his shoulder, and his knee, he messed up a little bit. Which is actually pretty good for like a 10-year pro career.
I know.
Right?
That's sad. I don't know if people know that. Though.
Yeah, that's like, he's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
The labral tear almost ended his career.
Yeah,
He tore his labrum. He was on the brink of making the NHL, having an all-star year in the AHL. He's like, you know what, I'm going to do the surgery halfway through the season so I could come back for the next year instead of doing it in the summer and like missing half the year. He did the surgery here, and he just knew as soon as it was done, he's like, something's not right. He's like, the guy took my internal rotation away. He just says like, I can't kick my leg out anymore. And like, he has so much, and he could do the full splits at 6'3" and kick his leg out to make butterfly saves. And the guy refused to MRI his hip. He's like, I need an MRI, and he said no. And they traded him, and when he reported that week, they MRI'd his hip, and they're like, whoever did your surgery, it was terrible. There's like screws floating in your hip and shit. They're like, we'll pay for your surgery here. He's like, after a week of the second surgery, he's like, I felt better than 7 months of rehab with that one. And they saved his career. He went through some shit after that year. He basically had to start in the East Coast League, which is like where dreams go to die. And, now he's in the KHL making like $500,000 US, and like he's the best goalie in the league.
Shit.
But it could have went the other way.
Yeah.
And when he decided to get the surgery, the goalie in the NHL got hurt. The goalie from the East Coast went East Coast AHL, plays in the NHL now.
Shit.
Because 2 guys got hurt.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. That's sports, though.
That's how the game goes, right?
He's like, I fucking gave that guy a career.
Yeah, really. But I mean, another good point you're bringing up is I think some people out there literally think that when you deal with a professional athlete, you're dealing with the highest peak of human health.
No, I say this all the time. They're the most unhealthy people ever.
Mike Ranfone,
Yeah.
one of my good buddies, he said, health is the cost for high performance.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like, it's 100% right. Because I know for me, like, go and deal with my first NBA team, and I'm dealing with guys who are, as athletes,
Yeah.
oh my God, like.
Would you say it's NBA athletes are better than NFL? Because I always side NFL.
How do you quantify?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Like, I mean, I suppose if you had a competition where you're like, everyone's going to play everything, and we're going to see who sucks the least overall.
But what if you just have like a general combine of just raw skills, like who's the fastest, who jumps the longest, who jumps the highest, who could do the agility thing that we set up.
Okay, but yeah, we're going to add those things because now gymnasts come into the play, right? Because if you're going to,
but they can't like then the strength thing. So I mean, what you're saying is that is there a law of specificity in human physiology? We all know that there certainly is. That's why it's so hard to say. Like I don't know who would end up. I would say it's one or the other.
Football or basketball? You think are the best?
I think all hockey athletes are not great. I think there's like too much skill in that sport.
I think wrestlers would have something to say.
Wrestlers, okay.
Yeah, I mean.
But I think one of the interesting takeaways from the whole conversation, because we see it across the board and back to Jiu-Jitsu, is it's amazing how broken people could accommodate and compensate
Yeah.
and still perform.
Yeah.
Until they can't anymore.
Yeah. They told my brother he's gonna have a hip replacement by 45.
Yeah.
Full hip. My dad had a hip replacement at 50 and played like high school football.
Look, if there was a perfect way to do this, the idea would be create the internal skills and capacities necessary for whatever your external demands are. I think there is a way to do this, even in restructuring the way jiu-jitsu's taught. I don't know how, because I'm not a jiu-jitsu instructor, but there seems to be a way to tell the story which conforms to the person. For example, you have a room full of people, you have one guy who literally has no hip, like there's no rotation at all, internal, external, which by my definitions, if you can't rotate a hip, you actually by definition don't have a hip, because the fundamental thing a hip does is rotates, right?
Correct.
So you don't have a hip, and you're beside 10 people who do, and you're about to learn how to throw up triangles. I understand that you're running a program, you have 60 people, but if you had best case scenario, I would argue that that dude should probably be focusing somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like arm triangles are in the game for you right now.
Yeah.
But if you want to get a triangle, step up. Now, I'll give you an example. 10th Planet guys kind of get this, because to do an effective rubber guard is to say that you have a physical skill that nobody else has.
Right.
So they work towards that skill. They don't do it correctly because they do it very passively, and I can explain why it's dangerous to, especially for jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu guys think that if they can make themselves bendy, that they have the advantage, and they do not.
I have a couple guys who are like 19 who have herniated discs at my gym.
You do not have an advantage by being bendy.
They're like the guys who you can't pass their guard because they just fold into a pretzel. And then they like herniate random discs too, like in the middle of their back or their neck. And
Because the idea that you can acquire passive flexibility and somehow use that for active sport is so fundamentally flawed. And I can go on. I can go on as to why that's fundamentally flawed for hours. Not the least of which is the fact that the only thing that really prevents you from being injured, or the only thing that defends you against the injury when you boil down to it, is strength. It's the only outcome measure that matters, right? Because when you get injured, it's like the amount of force that went in exceeds the amount that you can absorb.
Right.
So the only way to increase that is to add strength, which is to say you can't just be bendable. You have to be strong bendy, right? You have to have ranges that you can control. And it's like this. If you acquire something passively, like if you get into the splits passively after a warm-up, and I say, okay, well, can you kick your leg all the way over your head to 180? Well, no, I can only lift my leg to 90. Okay, so you have a passive split of 180, right? And then you can control 90, or you can actively move into 90, which means that there's 90 degrees for which you have exactly zero experience using.
Yeah.
Because you can't move where you can't move. Which means that if you have no experience with that 90, not only is that 90 worthless for you in terms of what you can do with it, throw up a triangle, but it's also useless if you threw up the triangle and someone tried to break out, you have no experience there. So that means you have no strength training experience, which means you have no strength.
Yeah, I think you said this, and it might have been in the seminar, or like this is kind of what I took from it. But I always find that, like, again, in my gym, when people who do yoga, those are the people that always are hurt the most. They're the most flexible, like they have the most like passive flexibility. But the guys who are like on the stiffer side, they'll like break, but they're usually not banged up like yogis are.
It's a different kind of banged up, yeah.
And it's like they're all, like everything kind of hurts, but a guy who's really stiff, it's like he'll like have a traumatic injury.
It's messed up because stiffness, the way it's talked about in the general population, is a bad thing. But in my profession, to have a tissue that's stiff is to say that it's responsive and that it can take direction properly, right? So you're right in saying that there's these two boundaries, like people who make themselves flexible via passive means, and then there's people who have no flexibility, but the ranges they have, they're strong.
They can at least, they're really strong.
So now, if you, it's like our system, if you can somehow marry these two things, where the stiff person is constantly trying to move that way towards more range, but they bring their strength with them.
Okay.
Or you take this sloppy I don't mean sloppy. Now people are going, oh, you call yoga. That's not what I'm saying. But you take people who acquired the flexibility passively, or they were just naturally flexible. Those people have to be brought that way.
Correct. Yeah.
And it is what it is. You can't move where you can't move, and the places that you can't move, you have no experience, which means you've never trained, which means you have no strength there, which means you can't absorb force. The end. You know what I mean? It's just kind of how it goes. And now you can say, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys will say, well, you don't need to have a lot of ranges of motion, because look at some of these guys. There's some guys who are stiff as shit and they do good at jiu-jitsu. But if I could give that guy a pill and I can go, okay, you'll keep all of your skill, but you'll have greater workspace, which means to say you have greater range of motion to apply your skill, everyone would take the fucking pill. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like this, if you are bendable, you're justifying being bendable. If you're not bendable, you're justifying not being bendable, but you're both wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I had a funny chat with Dan, our instructor in Australia.
Our FRS instructor.
Yes, our FRS instructor in Australia.
At False Grip.
At False Grip. Dan
FalseGrip.com.
Good lad.
Yeah.
And he's explaining, he was talking to like a pro rugby S&C coach and explaining, why they should, maybe explore the system. And, he looked around the room and he noticed 7 people were in slings and all had postseason shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
And when he sort of dove deep with, one of his colleagues over there, he said, like, what's going on here? He goes, oh, well, our guy thinks tight shoulders are strong shoulders. And I said to him, I hope you start laughing. And I said, well, how's that working out for you? Because apparently somebody's missing part of this equation if everybody's getting surgery.
Oh yeah, we're not doing this right. That's the thing that I keep running into is like, we think we're doing this right. And people love having people on podcasts to talk about, like, what do they call them? They're hackers.
I'm a biohacker.
I'm a biohacker. And I've heard these people, and listen, I'm a specialist in human physiology. Let's just say it. I hear biohackers and I hear people who generally don't understand the laws of human physiology. Like, there's no hacking. It's either you're putting the work in on a repeated basis or you're not. And if you're hacking, whatever benefit you got from hacking will not be there tomorrow, says everything ever published in the history of science, which is the scientific revolution, is like 500 to 600 years old.
Yeah.
So there is no magic, like,
God damn it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep telling these people there's nothing. Like, people say weird things like my glutes inhibited and I went to my guy and he turned it back on. Like, they're hacking these things. There's no turn it back on. Your glute didn't decide to inhibit. Your glute is made of thousands of individual muscles called muscle fibers that we group into this thing called a glute, which is just a mouth noise to describe a bunch of shit that we can't individually name. Because in a glute, if you have thousands of glute fibers, every fiber is its own muscle, but that would be a lot of muscle names.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where was I going with that? The glutes do what the glutes do. I remember where I was going.
No switching on.
And the idea that a glute woke up in the morning and goes, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm not working today. It's so weird because clearly there's a reason why your central nervous system has changed its output to lessen the amount of output you get out of your glute. If you have a fucked up hip, well, then your fucked up hip is telling your brain that your hip is fucked, which means the motor output to the hip is going to be such to defend the fucked up hip. So when your glute goes off, it's like people get mad. Right. And I keep telling people, if you didn't compensate like that, you wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Like, if someone has a compensation, everyone's like, oh my God, we got to get rid of it. And I'm like, no, man, that shit's saving you. So you want to train out of it over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But to think that I can get rid of it today is dangerous.
Yeah, makes sense.
Same reason why when people have like a toe that's pointed out that way, they have valgus toes, which they always blame on their mother for some reason because it's always genetic. Meanwhile, your mother just should have fucking trained her foot maybe, and you should train your foot. I don't know if it's genetic, but anyway, your foot, your toes. I kept going. I don't even remember where I was going with this again.
The valgus toes.
The valgus toe. Oh, you got a valgus toe, and someone's like, put a spacer. You ever see the girls? They do their nails. Yeah. They have those toe spacers.
Yeah.
So the person, think about this. The person's toe has been moving valgus over years of adaptations to compensations to so that you can continue to walk. Because really, if you lose dorsiflexion of your toe, you're not going to stop walking. It's not like you're going to put your foot down. I can't dorsiflex and it pushes you back. No, you're going to fucking walk, but you're just going to bend over the inside of your toe.
Yeah.
So it's going to take you years and years to start this going. And then someone goes, fuck that, put a spacer in. And now just, walk. It's like, okay, now we have another problem, because now the physical body has changed to accommodate for your shitty gait. And now you're saying that accommodation is not what you wanted. So you're contradicting the body's process, slamming the toe where you want it, and not remembering that, there's bony growth now because it's fucked up.
Right.
And you just decided, fuck the bony growth, I'll just slam into it 1,000 times because you want the foot to be straight because you think that's normal.
Hold on, I got to take my spacers out.
Yeah. It's not.
I just think everything you said makes sense, obviously, right?
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I sense a but.
Yes.
No, there's not. There's a but it's not like it. It seems like the voice of the people over here. Like, look, I'm a strength and conditioning, come from a meathead background guy. I'll kind of give a little background. I started lifting because I was weak in jiu-jitsu. That's why I have a gym now, and that's why I'm a proponent of lifting, because I started doing strongman stuff with this group of guys that do jiu-jitsu. I turned 19, 20, 21, physically developed, and now I'm a strong guy in the mats. But before I was the weakest guy in the mats. So it's like anyone who starts from being weak to getting strong, or not being able to output force to being able to output force, we just know this one way.
Yes. Yep.
So it's like the voice of those people, lift weights, push sleds, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
So if you're oh, but do this way, it's like, well, thousands of people are doing this way.
I know.
And it's like, where do you bridge the gap? So what you're saying with the toe thing obviously makes sense, but if the spacer guys, or the orthotic guys, I had orthotics when I was a kid.
Yep.
That's just what we did,
Yep. And it's, posture people. I get, so when I do seminars, if you've never been to my seminar, what I don't do is just tell you how it is and move on. I tell you how it is, and I tell you the exact line of scientific literature that made me think that this is how it is. You know what I mean? So I spend a lot of time. And one thing that I have to spend extra time on is explaining to people that everything you think you know about posture and what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong is fundamentally wrong, right? The idea,
that's a tough one for people. Yeah,
it's a tough one.
When I heard that at the
man.
seminar, I was
it's hard because
it's hard to swallow. Yeah,
anterior head carriage, having your head like this. I mean, we've made careers out of telling people that's bad, and now you have research that's saying, actually, it's not bad. It doesn't seem to be bad. We now have research saying that even if you wanted to change posture, just exercising is not going to do it. People have that weird thing. If you have rolled shoulders, make your rhomboid stronger, and then you'll stand like this.
Yeah.
How do you explain or rock climbers? Rock climbers have conceivably the strongest pulling tissues of any other sport. And if you look at a group of rock climbers stand, they don't stand like dancers with amazing posture.
Right.
Similarly, a 12-year-old dancer does not have stronger rhomboids than a 25-year-old rock climber.
Yeah.
And it doesn't relate. And then you go back to the idea that I think that's an evolution problem. I think people have this weird concept that our species is moving towards something better. So everything was quadrupedal. We went to bipedal because we upgraded. And that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what human evolution is, because it is not. We still have DNA in our genome that technically codes for quadrupedalism. It's not like we used to be quadrupedal, so that gets passed on.
Right.
It's not like we just get rid of that DNA. It's still there. So now you got to say, well, what part of the coding is normal for human? You don't code for normal posture. You code for proteins. So standing like this, the reason, legitimately, the reason why we say this is good posture is because this is anatomic position.
Yeah. Which
is just another way of saying if you take a picture of me to put in a magazine or in a textbook, you see the most shit when I do this. But nobody ever said that was normal. That's not the way you're supposed to stand, nor is this the way you're supposed to sit. Sitting like this is bad for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Sitting like this is bad for a long period of time.
When I was a kid, I would sit on my knees, and I was always told not to. Like, don't sit on your knees. It's bad. I'm like, okay.
Nobody can say that shit.
This is like pre-Google. I'm like, I guess it's just bad now.
Yeah. The W, like people have these because
they told me not to eat paste, but it was,
you should have eaten glue as much as possible.
You know what I'm saying? It's just the voice, again, voice over here versus this voice is just, how do you make your voice louder?
I know. And that's the problem you're running into is like, we were getting at this because we were saying like, the fundamentals of a lot of it is wrong, and the fundamentals are repeated so often that even if you know them to be wrong, you start to believe them to be true.
Yeah.
and we see it anecdotally every once in a blue moon in a seminar, especially a pro seminar. So we work with a lot of professional teams, like we're probably up to about 50 or 55 professional teams that we work with. And then every once in a blue moon, usually Dre will be lecturing, and we'll get some feedback where somebody's brain basically broke halfway through the seminar because now we've called them to question everything they believe about S&C and programming and how people evolve and all this kind of stuff. And it's just a fundamental lack of not being open to new ideas, really, right? They're so and it harkens back to this whole concept of seminaritis. I took this, I learned this, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is the way you do it. And, we'll get the odd thing of like, how dare they?
Yeah.
How dare they tell me I'm training something possibly incorrectly?
Yeah.
This is horseshit, and they're out. Whereas there's another 100 people in the seminar going, haven't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Well, there's people right now funny enough, there's people right now watching this who are waiting to just fucking throw jabs, right? Which is amazing because what a waste of your time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you fundamentally disagree with me and you're sitting here listening to this just to see if you can poke at
pick
something,
out something,
for fuck's sakes.
Yeah.
Get it. Go study jiu-jitsu. Shut up. Like, do something. But yeah, it's arrogant because if I say there's fundamentally something wrong, people are like, whoa, you don't know everything. I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't. But when you think about it, for example, this might be interesting for you. When did you learn, just think about when did you learn muscle physiology? Like if I said you learned muscle physiology, how long ago did you learn it?
When I was in university.
So how many years ago?
6 or 7.
Okay, so 6 or 7. Fundamentally, the way we know muscles to function has changed in that time.
Okay.
Like some people say, I learned the sliding filament theory back first day, first grade in university. When did you go to university? 20 years ago. Listen, the sliding filament theory is, and for those of you who don't know, it's the proposed mechanism as to how muscles contract.
Yeah, that's what I learned too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's a good, it's fine, but it's not the way it happens, right? And now we know, for example, that we used to think that muscles create force in one direction along the lines of the visual fibers.
Yeah.
So like a bicep goes that way.
Yeah, remember like the diagram, it like pulls.
It pulls.
Yeah,
Like,
it just goes like that. The actin and myosin.
You know how
shit,
you know how we learned that? What bicep does? We literally take cadavers. We feed like strings through the cadavers to their origins and insertions, and you pull on them, and it goes like this. So this is now what the bicep does.
Yeah.
And now an entire industry is built on this.
Yeah.
So you start making machines. What are the machines for? They're to
do that.
to put load against you while you do this. Because we thought muscles create force in one direction. Now, pick up any human phys book or article right now, and what you realize is that muscles do not only produce force linearly. When a muscle contracts, it gets wider. So a lot of that force is shot laterally. So to the extent some studies will say like 70% of the forces actually distribute laterally instead of going in one direction. Which is another thing to say that the actin and myosin, when they cross each other, they also separate.
Okay.
So you have like these Z discs, if you remember.
Yeah.
Z disc, you'll remember, right? You have actin and myosin like that, and then they make these cross bridges. ATP is broken, they slide. These get smaller. So the idea is this moves that way, that moves that way. That's how your muscle contracts.
Correct.
That would be cool if it wasn't for the fact that your muscle is made of several sarcomeres, which makes that doesn't make sense because if this goes that way and this goes that way, then how can this also go that way and that way?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, right? And now, not only that, but now when you contract, you're not only working that way, the actin and myosin actually separates.
Okay.
Because everything gets wider. So now we're like, okay, so muscles don't only do this. They do a shit ton more, right? But the exercises don't reflect that. Like, so now we have new knowledge, but the exercises are the same ones they were. So that's why when I say there's a fundamental problem here in how we select exercises, and people, oh, you're fucking being arrogant. I'm actually the opposite. I'm looking at it saying, oh my God, guys, I think we might have fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not saying I invented the solution. I'm saying we fucked up. And
So like, say if jiu-jitsu guy comes to me and they're like, I want to get stronger.
yeah.
And then you were training them. Or sorry, they go to you and they're like, I want to get stronger. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're like world class and they just need to get stronger. Where do you start?
I break down their entire body.
Okay.
I look at the workspaces of every one of their joints. What's a workspace? A workspace is like, if I say, show me the workspace of your shoulder, what I'm saying is, if you show me the maximal amount of space that your arm can move through, this is your workspace. This is the space where I can do work. If I have a shit shoulder and I go like this, this is your workspace. So whatever work you're going to do, training, whatever, you can only do it in your workspace. So in my opinion, workspace trumps everything when it comes to programming.
Okay.
If one of these jiu-jitsu people, let's give me an example. High-level guy? Let's give a high-level guy.
Right now, the guys who I'm doing work with that are doing jiu-jitsu is more like, here's a program, and they do it like twice a week.
Let's say that you give me a high-level guy and you say, what would you do? Right?
Yeah.
Number one, if you're strong enough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're fucking strong enough. You're there. You're at the game. You're strong enough. You're probably fast enough. So what is the lowest hanging fruit? You are. So I would assess you. I would assess every joint. I would look at what is the workspace we have to work with. I would check how much passive range of motion you have, how much active range of motion you have. So in other words, I'm going to internally assess what your body is capable of.
Right.
If your body doesn't have the capacities it requires, like your hip doesn't rotate, that's where you start. And people find that scary because they think to start there is to stop training.
That's it, yeah. Because they're like, oh, I was doing trap bar deadlifts and sleds and all
That's
this
because
shit.
you've never trained with me.
Yeah.
I will fuck you up with you. Does that make sense? Like, I don't need those weights.
Yeah.
I will, when you're done internally training with me, you're going to beg for max effort deadlifts. Because what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start saying, instead of you wasting max effort energy on shit that you can't do,
right,
I'm going to apply max effort training internally to your joints. And then once I start to break open workspace, now you have shit to work with.
Yeah.
So there's more to it than that, but fundamentally, if you ask what would I do, that's what I do. Like when a pro athlete comes to me, I've had guys come in here, you've seen them, they're there where they are. Like they're the guy, right?
Yeah.
So when they come into me, how do I make this guy, this guy's got to get better. Better than who?
He's already the best.
The fucking best.
Yeah.
So the only conceivable what am I going to do? Put more plyos? Like you go to any other trainer with the best guy in the world, you go, make me better. What are they going to do? They're going to do the same shit that everyone else is doing. I'm pointing
just
over
kind of like
here
ordered
again.
Differently.
This is where our gym is, by the way. That's why I point over there. But it's going to be ordered differently, or I use this, German volume training, or I do it this way, or I do it that. But fundamentally, you're taking something they're already good enough at because they're the best in the world.
Right.
Technically. So if you give me the best in the world, my only answer for you is if I can make it so that when the best guy in the world's brain wants his body to do something, if the body responds with 100% accuracy 100% of the time, you have a super person, right? Like if you give me LeBron, you want to make a super LeBron, make it so that when LeBron has a basketball thought, his body executes.
Okay.
That's the definition of why he's the best. It's not because he's Wayne Gretzky, was he the strongest? Was he the fastest? No, it's because his brain, the execution of his brain is better than other people's. So get himself out of his own way. That's what I do with Mike. When you send me the best jits guy in the world, I'm just going to get him out of his way, just so that he can execute.
And sort of the answer isn't stop all your strength training.
No, of course not.
That's not what we're saying. It's how do you prioritize and how do you carve up the week
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Of doing that, because we're not telling every S&C person in the world, oh yeah, you can't use these exercises.
No, my God, of course.
Because I think that's like, again, from an S&C person's point of view, when we hear it, it's like, no more squats, deadlifts, presses. It's like,
listen to this. How about this? How about instead of using your deadlifts and squats as your max efforts, why don't you just change the percentage of weight you're using, throw them into your dynamic efforts so that you maintain those qualities, and then add max efforts in where it's more needed. Like if I need a hip, if I need internal rotation, I can max train effort into internal rotation.
Yeah.
It's just that it's the ability to discuss with your client that I'm not taking training away, I'm substituting training. That's the key.
Yeah.
Because
if you could fast forward, like have the conversation and then fast forward 3-6 months down the line and have the results, you'll sell every time, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest problem. Like doing the cars and stuff with some of my even general population clients, they don't want to do it. Like they're not doing it properly. They're just kind of rotating their arm and like, okay, let's get to this shit. Like I want to lose some weight, you know?
Yeah. It's
tough, man.
Yeah. People who want to lose weight never factor in the fact that when you're injured, you're not burning calories. Like, you know what I mean? Like I want to lose weight, so I don't want to do any of the shit.
I want to tone. I just want to tone.
Yeah, I just want to tone. That word means nothing, right? It means exactly nothing. But anyway.
And then listen. The other interesting part too is this is the starting point of the system.
Yeah.
Of getting you that workspace, because then eventually what happens is you have a client or an athlete in front of you who has great workspace. And then you go into like the next phase of the system. It's like
train, motherfucker.
Train. Can we get speed and endurance and velocity?
Have you ever had a professional athlete come in and then like, oh, your body's good?
Yes.
Really?
Very rare. No, they're never perfect.
But like they have like enough that you're good with it.
Yeah, dude. Like hockey players traditionally have no hips at all.
Yeah.
Why? Because you're fucking playing hockey. Yeah. Millions of years of evolution has said that when you drive a sagittal force into the ground, you propel yourself forward. Hockey comes and says, fuck that. I'm going to put a blade on the bottom of your foot. Push out to the side, and you'll go forward.
They also have no ankles. They're always elevated. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I've had a few players that, actually one player that you think you know who I'm talking about, but yeah, he was like a gymnast that plays hockey.
Oh yeah, he was freaky. Yeah.
Okay, and you know what
it's just like luck of the draw type of thing.
No,
or he did the work too.
Well, he did the work. Like he had the movement. I had to give him control of the movement, but he knew internal training before external rule. He knew that rule.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A lot of body weight stuff. He wasn't there, but he was better. Part of it's genetic as well. But the most important part about this is with that guy. Oh my God! You can make a legit monster.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about this 35-10 problem. You don't have to worry about making him imbalanced. You don't have to worry about injuries will come, but they're not going to come as a result of what you're assigning when you have a body like that.
Right.
But it's rare. It's rare because sports is not normal. Right.
Also, anyone who plays hockey, they've been probably playing. Like my brother started playing, you could say, the professional level at 8. Because AAA starts at 9, and he played Super 8, which is like the elite 8-year-olds. And at AAA, you're on the ice 5 times a week.
It's a grind.
Yeah. So from 9 to, he's going to be 30 this year. And then, minus the hiccup when he had the hip surgery.
Yeah. And to bring up Quint again, like Quint works with a lot of bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They're still moving lots of weight, but they have access to way more, and that's how they're getting bigger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a good thing to point out. We don't have to go too deep on that, but even a bodybuilder, like your access to yourself is the predeterminant factor as to how much muscle you can add to yourself. Because if you can't access yourself, that means you can't access muscle tissue. And if you can't access muscle tissue, by definition, you can never adapt the muscle tissue to get larger.
Yeah.
Right. So the access to yourself is the number one factor for even something like bodybuilding. When you're going to go into the gym and do these machines and whatever, but who is the body going to the lift? That's the question. Everyone's always wondered about the lift, right? Everyone wants to know, how do I coach a lift? How do I, knees out, chest up, blah, 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 blah. But I think what we're forgetting is the athlete that is going to the bar is a huge variable, not just the bar, right? The bar, you accommodate to the bar, but you accommodate to the bar. The bar doesn't do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. That might have been off topic, or how long have we been going, by the way?
I think we're almost there. So.
Yeah. I think like
Over an hour, okay.
to go back to jiu-jitsu, they're like in the stone age when it comes to training, because like when I started to now jiu-jitsu competitions, it's like UFC 1 to UFC now. Like there wasn't even pre-registration, so you'd get to the tournament at 8 a.m., have to sign up, and then they're like trying to put it together. Some guys were competing at like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And like they figured like, oh, maybe like you just register before you get there so we could have everything and all the brackets. That's like a new thing where like I could go to the competition. It's like you're competing at 2:03.
Yeah, you know who you're competing against.
Against this guy, like be there at this time. Yeah. That's new. That's not like how it used to be. And so when like they're behind on that angle and they're behind on the training, like usually I find a lot of martial arts guys is like, just do that. You know, like, you know, the old boxing mentality, like don't lift weights, just box and run. You know, it's a little bit like that with jiu-jitsu, where it's like just do jiu-jitsu and it will take care of itself, type of thing.
Funny enough, there is a underlying truth. It's not 100% accurate, but based on what we've said, there is some truth to that, where you can waste a lot of time in a gym.
Yeah.
Just like there's internet fuckers out there who will tell me that I spend all this time making people bendy and whatever, and I do not do that. Like, you only need as much range of motion as you need, plus or minus a buffer, and then anything further than that, you're wasting your time. Like, if you're a hockey player who's hell-bent on doing the splits, there's something fundamentally wrong in what you want.
It's like a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot of baseball teams, and we've heard this we've heard this more than you'd want to hear, but a lot of times the pitchers, as their strength increases, their pitch speed decreases.
Really?
Yeah, it's very specific, right? It's more to it than just getting strong. But anyway, we can go on forever.
And there was a specific example in Major League Baseball where a team that we don't have to name brought in an S&C coach who was all hell bent on lifting and Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
Everybody fucked up.
Oh, man. And then one of our instructors, getting back to Quinn, he said something funny. This is not the same guy, but it was another guy. He was talking to a baseball coach, MLB guy, and they were saying that they're bringing in some like power lifts and Olympic lifts, which is really not common for baseball anyway. And the instructor, it was John Quint, he goes to him, he goes, so understand this, it's a baseball S&C guy working with a baseball team, teaching them how to Olympic lift. So John asked him, he goes, do you guys have scouts? He goes, yeah, we have scouts. And he goes, are you scouting out Olympic weightlifters and turning them into baseball players?
Yeah.
The guy goes, no. And everyone understands that when I say it that way, everyone's like,
you feel stupid when you say
that. Yeah, right? It's what, like, so you're going to spend.
I at least got that one right. I was like, don't teach a guy who does a sport another sport.
Yeah, like how much time are you going to spend? Like, there's only certain much time during the week. How much time do you have to dedicate to doing that lift properly?
Yeah.
Because you could probably be practicing your grounding. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
also, when did Olympic lifts just become a thing that like, yeah, it's just like you just do it. I have a kid at my gym who's like, this is his entire life.
It's association.
The guy's 155 pounds and squats over 500 pounds and like is just below 400 pound clean and jerk.
I'm okay. I don't care what people do, right? I'll train you.
Like that's his sport.
Sure. If that's your sport, that's fine. But if it's not your sport, it's not your sport. Like it's just fucking not your sport. And you never say I'm going to get good at soccer to get good at ping pong.
Yeah.
But people think that weight training, like I said, it's the association bias that weight training is strong. Powerlifting is power. I want power. I need to power lift. And that's not how this works. But anyway, I wanted a few more questions, jiu-jitsu specific for you.
Yeah.
Guys listening, going through the ranks, maybe he's a blue belt, thinks he knows everything by this point.
Yeah.
Because you know blue belts know everything.
Yeah, that's the belt that I thought I knew everything too.
That's the belt.
That's the belt that I won the most street fight.
Yeah. Fuck everyone up.
And I'm like, thank God I did it.
You're probably less able to defend yourself in a weird way.
Oh man, I was like, yeah, because like the worst jiu-jitsu guy is the guy who's been doing it for about 3 to 5 months, because when he's random, he's doing stuff that's like some guys like that's not how you do it. So once he learns how to do it, he's just so shitty at doing it.
Yeah.
So like now you learned how to play the game proper, like how we all play it. You just suck now.
I say that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a striker,
Yeah.
but sparring with a white belt or
they're just crazy.
It's
And
horrifying.
you don't see those angles and like
Oh yeah,
you always see things down the line, right?
Yeah.
One of my, again, often we'll train on Saturdays together, and one of my favorite things is, I'll work with Matt, I'll get my ass kicked, and I'll watch Matt work with somebody else. And then Matt may whisper in my ear, sometimes he goes, does that guy even know Jiu-Jitsu? Because it's, again, and this is Matt.
You can feel it. You can feel it, right?
He feels it, and he'll put himself in this, again, because he's listen, let's be honest, he's playing with his food at this point. Like, he'll step into somebody's guard, let them make all their connections, and then Matt, like, okay, you ready to go? Like, do whatever you want to do to me.
Yeah.
And then he starts problem solving. And then, again, it's whether they could shut him down or not, it's the thing of, like, Matt's seeing, it's like what's this guy doing? Like, and he'll first one to say, oh yeah, this guy's great, he's doing this, he's working technique. I'm still gonna, like, I still may kill him.
Yeah.
But he's applying the technique.
He has an idea of what he's doing. He knows.
Yeah.
So what you were saying is like the blue belt, he thinks he knows everything. Okay, so the gym that I came up in when I started, it was you're a white belt, just go. That's how most gyms are. When George came, he changed the system and he separated all the white belts from the colored belts. And you have a very strict white belt curriculum. It's like if you're a white belt, you have to learn X, Y, and Z to get to blue belt. So when you're getting to blue belt, where you're like thrown into the sharks, essentially, you at least know how to stand up and close guard, how to like base, how to bridge. You have a fundamental idea of like how to do it. You might still suck, but at least you're doing the thing correctly. So to what you were saying, I could tell, like, if I step into a guy's De La Hiva and he's like has no idea of where to grip and he has like he's almost like short circuiting, he doesn't know anything because like you should know that at blue, purple, brown, black, right? Like if I go to pass your guard and you do something that's like totally not what you're supposed to do, like you don't have no, like you're not trying to recover your guard, so you could kind of feel it, right? It doesn't mean the guy's worse or better. Like that guy might still be able to beat people up, but it's like I just know that he doesn't have a concept of who he is as a jiu-jitsu player. Does that make sense? Like when he approaches De La Hiva, he has no tools. When I'm in his close guard, like he has no tools. Like I'll close guard on guys and like they just won't even know how to open it. They'll just kind of put their hands everywhere and just hope that the guard opens. It's like that's not what we do.
It's like training.
Yeah.
Most people don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Most people are legitimately have like, you know what locked in syndrome is? It's horrifying. But
Locked in syndrome?
Like people get surgery and they get the anesthetic and they can feel everything, but they can't move. So it's a horrible thing. I don't want to make light of it, but most people, you can say, have kind of like a locked in syndrome.
Yeah.
But we program them like they're dancers, right? Like if someone walks into your office and you're a trainer and you're like, oh, we're doing snatches today.
Yeah.
You are saying that guy has prerequisites that almost no one on the planet owns.
Yeah.
And you just assume he's got them. Let's just fucking see what happens.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to what you're saying. So if you were to give one piece of advice
to new persons, say they've been only training for a year, train a lot and acquire as much skill as you can, but you got to be on the mats. It's like you've heard me before, if I cover for Joel or something that pisses me off, like, is when guys are training and like in the rolls or like sitting there and talking and like, not really training. Like when it's time to train, do the training part. So like approach everything like you're going to roll properly, drill properly, and try to accumulate as much skill as you can. Because once you've been exposed to like, this is what jiu-jitsu is, then you're going to find things you like, oh, I really like close guard, and then you're going to double down on that. That's what I did.
Would you say then that you want them to create a base of the skills they need so that they can then pile complexity onto those skills?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Which is exactly what I say people with regards to training.
Yeah.
People want to go right to blue belt and roll, where what they should be doing is acquiring fundamental skills so that you can then build.
Yeah, you'll be a better blue belt. If you look at who's the best Berimbolo guy, Mushimeshi, right? People see this kid, he's a rooster weight, and he like fucks everybody up with like just Berimbolo or even the Meow brothers, and like, oh, they only must know Berimbolo. No, they know everything.
Yeah.
That's the thing that they double down in, and that's who makes them jiu-jitsu. Like Keenan, I faced Keenan. Do you think he wormed guard me up? No, the guy was Toriano passing me like he was dancing. He knows worm guard now, but at purple belt, he was passing guys guards and backstepping and just making your life a living hell.
That's like you take someone like Eddie and you forget that he's a black belt under Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah.
He's not a guy that just made shit up. Like the fact that you can be creative is only because of the fact that you have a foundation to create on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when they tell fighters, I hate this advice, but they're like, John Jones, Anderson Silva, they're very creative. Go in there and be creative. So then a person who has no business being creative goes in there and starts throwing like a
crazy shit,
just some crazy shit to be creative. But the fact is that John Jones is not saying, I'm going to be creative now.
Yeah.
John Jones is creative.
Yeah.
And his body allows him the degrees
display,
of freedom.
like same with Stylebender, yeah.
Same with Stylebender.
Yeah. And then from a strength and conditioning standpoint, it's like, again, I'm like you. I don't actually hate CrossFit. I just hate I just hate the people.
I have nothing wrong with it. It's a sport.
But it's like, oh, this guy's doing snatches. Like I've never even seen a barbell. Let's just go to snatch.
Give it a go.
That'd be like you going into first day math class and being like calculus.
Right? People play CrossFit, right? But CrossFit's a sport, right? If you treat it like a sport, it's brilliant. You would never run onto an NFL field and go, let's just give this shit a go.
Yeah.
You would never jump in the octagon with a real fighter and say, I'm going to fucking try this out.
Yeah.
The part the CrossFit, that part that you're taking people and you're putting them into this crazy, difficult, specific scenario without a foundation.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that's the problem.
Yeah, it's the foundation. And if you explain it like that, like I always use the writing a book thing. Like if you've never spoken the language, you're not going to just day one write a novel. Like learn the letters first, man. Like learn the words and then see what's up. You're not going to be the best, or you might be. Like all the good guys in my academy, they're all proficient everywhere. But like when I roll with, I'd say Nate Dos Santos is probably the best jiu-jitsu fighter in Canada right now. He's like the guy who's pushing like at black belt competing and stuff. I saw him from white belt. He started after me. He started before me. He knows how to open close guard, knows how to like escape side control, mount. When I roll with him now, he does his A game stuff, which is like intricate lapel stuff and De La Hiva, but I saw him 10 years ago. He learned all that stuff all the way around, became all the way up, then decided what he wanted to like double down in and make himself an effective competitor. He didn't start at that.
There's an order to this.
Yeah, there's an order. And it's that is what I've seen that the best guys are the guys who are like very effective do. And then I think like who makes somebody better or worse, there's like genetic components, how much they train, all that stuff sorts itself out. Sure. And then some people are just good.
I hate those fucking people.
Yeah. My brother's a good athlete. He's good at everything.
Yeah, I don't like your brother. I hate
He's in Kazakhstan right now, so
so I don't have to compete against him. I'm happy.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So what did your gym, which is where we do
Apex Training Center, where we host all the FRC
stuff, and it's Apex Training Center. It's Apex. What is it? The website.
ApexTrainingCenter.com.
ApexTrainingCenter.com. 300
Bridgeland, near Yorkdale, if you're in the city.
Okay.
And your very fun, awesome podcast.
Oh yeah. If you. The Long Talk podcast. If you like,
why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, so if you're into a podcast like The Fighter and the Kid, which is basically two guys hanging out and just shooting the shit and very bro style of humor, check out Long Talk podcast. Very different than this one. Actually, there's some similarities, but it's very male humor.
Okay,
yeah. It's a lot of fun.
How dare you?
You're a fan, right?
How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you? You white cisgender piece of shit.
All right, so. Very good. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
appreciate
man.
it. I'll have you back.
Of course.
Again. All right.
Sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. We're out.